Hey there, I'm Lena Martinez, a 33-year-old graphic designer trying to balance work, family, and some serious in-law drama. Let me fill you in on what's been going on. My daughter Sophia just turned 7. She's the absolute light of my life. My husband Alex and I have been planning her birthday party for weeks now. You should see how her eyes sparkle every time we talk about it. It's like Christmas morning all over again. Mommy, can I invite Zoe and Emma, and maybe Lucas too? Sophie asked, bouncing with excitement. Of course, sweetie. We'll make sure all your friends get invitations, I said, ruffling her hair. Alex chimed in with a grin. This is going to be the best party ever, princess. But here's where things start to get complicated. My in-laws, Vivian and Robert Thompson, and I, well, let's just say we don't exactly see eye to eye. They have this annoying habit of playing favorites with their grandkids, and their golden child is my nephew, Ethan. He's 9, and to hear them tell it, the sun practically shines out of his you-know-what. I remember last Christmas, Vivian was gushing over Ethan's macaroni art like it was a masterpiece, barely glancing at Sophia's handmade card. "Oh, Ethan, you're so talented. This belongs in a museum," she cooed while Sophia's little face fell. It took everything in me not to say something. So when it came time to plan Sophia's party, I knew I had to bite the bullet and ask Vivian if we could use their place. They've got this huge house that would be perfect for a kid's party. I procrastinated as long as I could, but finally, I made the call. "Hey Vivian, it's Lena," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "Oh, hello Lena," she replied, sounding about as thrilled as if I were trying to sell her a vacuum cleaner. "Sophia's birthday is coming up, and we were wondering if we could use your place for her party. It would be perfect with all that space," I said. There was a long pause. I could practically hear her rolling her eyes through the phone. "I suppose that would be all right," she said finally, as if she were doing me the biggest favor in the world. "Great, thanks so much. We were thinking the 15th. Does that work?" She mumbled. "Listen, Lena, I've got to run. We'll talk details later." And just like that, she was gone. No asking about Sophia, no excitement about her granddaughter's birthday. I hung up the phone, feeling that all too familiar mix of frustration and disappointment. Alex took one look at my face and knew. "Your mom again?" he asked, wrapping an arm around me. "Yeah," I sighed. Sometimes I wonder if she even cares about Sophia at all. "Hey, don't let them get to you," Alex said, giving me a reassuring squeeze. "We're going to throw Sophia an awesome party, with or without their enthusiasm." I nodded, trying to shake off the negativity. We had a party to plan, after all, and nothing, not even my ice-cold in-laws, was going to ruin it for my little girl. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a birthday drama that would change everything. 2 weeks before Sophia's big day, I called Vivian to finalize the details. I was feeling pretty good, thinking maybe we were finally getting somewhere. "Hi Vivian, it's Lena. Just wanted to touch base about Sophia's party next Saturday." There was a long pause on the other end. "Oh, about that," she began, and my stomach dropped. I knew that tone. It never meant anything good. "We've actually scheduled Ethan's birthday party for that day, so we won't be able to host Sophia's party after all." It felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What?" "But we've been planning this for weeks. Sophie's been looking forward to it for months." "Well, Ethan's party has been in the works for quite some time. It simply slipped my mind when you called earlier. Surely you understand that his party takes precedence. He is older, after all." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now? Sophia is your granddaughter too. How could you do this to her?" The argument escalated quickly. Vivian kept insisting that Ethan's party was more important and that they couldn't possibly change the date now. It was like talking to a brick wall. Then came the real kicker. "Besides, we've already called Sophia's friends' parents and told them the party was canceled." I saw red. "You did what? How dare you go behind our backs like that?" After hanging up, I was shaking with anger and disbelief. How was I going to tell Sophia? The thought of breaking her heart was almost unbearable. When I finally sat her down and explained, her little face crumpled. "But Mommy, why don't they want to have my party? Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, no. You didn't do anything wrong," I said, pulling her close. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and bad decisions, but we'll figure something out, okay?" Alex was stunned when I told him. At first, he couldn't believe his parents would do something like this. But as the reality sank in, I saw a fire in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "I'm going over there right now," he said, grabbing his keys. I wanted to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. When he came back, he looked drained but determined. "They're not budging. I can't believe they're choosing to hurt their own granddaughter like this." The next day, I ran into Michael at the grocery store. I couldn't hold back and confronted him about the situation. "Oh, come on, Lena. It's not that big a deal. Sophia's only 7. She probably won't even remember this birthday anyway. Ethan's party has been planned for months. You can't expect everyone to draw everything for your kid," he said nonchalantly. I was fuming. "She's your niece, Michael. Don't you care about her feelings at all?" He just shrugged and walked away, leaving me standing there, speechless and seething. Later that week, I stopped by my in-laws' house to pick up some of Sophia's toys she'd left there. As I approached the door, I overheard voices coming from the open window. "I can't believe Lena made such a fuss," Vivian was saying. "It's not our fault Sophia isn't as bright or talented as Ethan. Why should we have to pretend otherwise?" "Exactly," Michael chimed in. "And let's be honest, Lena and Alex aren't exactly Parents of the Year material. No wonder Sophia's so ordinary." It felt like I'd been slapped. Is that really what they thought of us? Of my sweet, beautiful Sophia? Over the next few days, I noticed Sophia becoming more withdrawn. Her teacher called, concerned about her sudden drop in grades and participation. It broke my heart to see her light dimming, all because of the cruelty of people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. That night, as I tucked her in, Sophia looked up at me with sad eyes. "Mommy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me like they love Ethan?" In that moment, I knew something had to change. This wasn't just about a birthday party anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from the toxic influence of people who clearly didn't have her best interests at heart. I kissed her forehead, my mind already racing with plans. "They're the ones missing out, sweetie," I whispered. "But don't you worry. Mommy's going to make sure everything turns out okay." After that night with Sophia, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. It was time to expose Vivian and Robert's toxic behavior once and for all. I started digging through old photos, videos, and emails, documenting every instance of their blatant favoritism and mistreatment. There was the Christmas where Ethan got a brand new bike while Sophie received a coloring book. The family picnic where Vivian fawned over Ethan's every move but barely acknowledged Sophia's presence. It was all there in black and white. I reached out to our family friend Sarah, who had witnessed some of these incidents firsthand. "Lena, I've been biting my tongue for years," she confessed. "The way they treat Sophia, it's not right. Count me in." Other friends came forward too, each with their own stories of Vivian and Robert's cruel behavior. It was like opening the floodgates. When I told Alex about my plan, he was hesitant at first. "Lena, are you sure about this? They're still my parents." "Look at our daughter, Alex," I said, pointing to Sophia's closed door. "She's hurting. We need to protect her." The next day, Sophia's teacher called again. Her grades were slipping further. That was the tipping point for Alex. "Okay," he said, his jaw set. "Let's do this." As I was gathering evidence, I stumbled upon something unexpected. While going through some old papers Alex had brought home from his dad's office, I found some questionable financial records. The numbers didn't add up, suggesting Robert might be involved in some kind of fraud. "Holy crap," I muttered, staring at the documents. This was bigger than I'd anticipated. I debated what to do with this information. It felt like dynamite in my hands. Finally, I decided to make an anonymous tip to a local investigative reporter known for exposing corporate misconduct. "I got a story for you," I said when she answered. "It involves family drama, favoritism, and potential fraud at Thompson Industries." The reporter, Jessica, was intrigued. "Can you provide any evidence?" "I can do one better," I replied. "How'd you like to witness it all firsthand?" That's when Alex and I hatched the plan for a family reunion at our house. We invited all the extended family and close friends, including Vivian, Robert, and Michael. The stage was set. As the day approached, we prepared our presentation, videos, photos, testimonials from friends, all ready to expose the truth. It was all there, a comprehensive showcase of years of cruelty and favoritism. The night before the reunion, Alex and I sat at the kitchen table, going over everything one last time. "Are you nervous?" I asked him. He nodded slightly. "A little, but you know what? I'm more excited to finally stand up for our family, for Sophia. I squeezed his hand. Me too. It's time they face the consequences of their actions. As we were about to head to bed, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica, the reporter. Got your tip. Did some digging. This goes deeper than you think. I'll be there tomorrow. This story is going to blow up. I showed Alex the message. His eyes widened. Looks like we're in for one hell of a family reunion, he said. I nodded, a mix of anticipation and nervousness churning in my stomach. Tomorrow, everything would change. The truth would finally come out, and Vivian and Robert would have to face the music. As I checked on Sophia one last time before bed, I saw her peaceful sleeping face and felt a surge of determination. This was for her, for every tear she'd shed, for every moment of self-doubt caused by her grandparents' cruelty. Tomorrow, we'd set things right. I kissed her forehead softly. Sleep tight, sweetie, I whispered. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. The day of the family reunion arrived, and as expected, Vivian, Robert, and Michael swaggered in, noses held high. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. Everyone, thank you for coming, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. Today we're going to talk about what family really means. I launched into my speech, laying bare years of hurt and favoritism. Then I hit play on our presentation. Gasps filled the room as photo after photo, video after video, exposed the truth. How dare you? Vivian screeched, but her protests were drowned out by the murmurs of shock and disgust from the other guests. Just then Jessica, the reporter, walked in. Mr. Thompson, I'd like to ask you about some financial discrepancies at your company. Robert's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. Oh really? Jessica pressed. Because I have documents suggesting otherwise. In his panic, Robert blurted out, it was just a few adjustments to the books, nothing serious. The room fell silent. Then sirens wailed in the distance as the police arrived to question Robert. Vivian and Michael tried to spin the situation, but their manipulation only served to alienate them further. Amid the chaos, I felt a tug on my sleeve. It was Sophia, her eyes wide. Mommy, what's happening? I knelt down beside her. We're making things right, sweetheart. Suddenly, Aunt Linda spoke up. Enough of this drama. Sophia, honey, isn't it your birthday soon? Why don't we celebrate that instead? The mood in the room shifted as Robert was led away and Vivian and Michael skulked out. The rest of the family rallied around Sophia. Impromptu decorations appeared, a cake was ordered, and soon laughter filled the air. In the weeks that followed, Robert faced legal consequences for his fraudulent practices. Vivian and Michael found themselves excluded from family events, their toxic behavior no longer tolerated. Alex and I made the difficult but necessary decision to cut ties with his parents. We focused on creating a loving, supportive environment for Sophia. A year later, we celebrated Sophia's next birthday surrounded by true family and friends. Her laughter echoed through the house as I watched her blow out her candles, her eyes shining with joy. I knew we'd made the right choice. Our little girl was flourishing, free from the shadow of her toxic grandparents, enveloped in genuine love and support. The story has come to an end. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed your in-laws' behavior publicly or tried to handle it privately? What do you think are the long-term consequences of either choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions could help others facing similar situations. Hi, I'm Emily. Growing up, my life was like being a shadow in a brightly lit room. Always there, but rarely noticed. You see, my younger brother Jake was the golden child. Our parents gave him everything he wanted, while I had to fight for every small achievement. When I was about 8, I remember one Christmas morning when Jake threw a tantrum because I got a new bike. It was secondhand, but it was new to me. Before the day was over, my parents rushed out to buy him a brand new one just to stop his crying. That was my normal. Things didn't improve as we got older. High school was a mix of me getting good grades and Jake barely passing, with our parents praising his mediocre efforts as if he'd won academic awards. Emily, why can't you be more supportive of your brother? He needs us more, my mom would say. It was always about what Jake needed. By the time I was 18, I had enough. I packed my bags and moved out, finding a job at a local garage sweeping floors and doing oil changes. The owner, a gruff old guy named Bill, saw something in me. "You've got a knack for this," he told me one day, handing me a wrench. That was the start of my education in auto repair. Over the next 7 years, I worked my way up from that dusty floor to becoming Bill's top mechanic. I saved every dime I could, working nights and weekends at the garage. When Bill decided to retire, I was ready. With the money I'd saved and a small loan, I bought the shop. At 25, I became the owner of my own business, Emily's Auto Clinic. The place wasn't much at first, just a couple of old lifts and a waiting area that smelled like motor oil and coffee, but it was mine. I worked hard, revamped the shop, hired a few good people, and soon we were known as the best in town. My success, though, seemed to only deepen the divide back home. My parents, still doting on an increasingly aimless Jake, viewed my independence as a challenge rather than an achievement. I heard through the grapevine, thanks to Aunt Linda, who couldn't keep a secret if it was superglued to her lips, that they were baffled at how I did it all on my own. "Emily's just lucky, I guess," my dad would say, his voice tinged with disbelief, but luck had nothing to do with it. It was all those nights under the hoods of cars. Every weekend spent learning about engines and electrical systems, while Jake partied and squandered the college fund our parents had scraped together. Yet despite all this, there's still a part of me that loves them. It's why, when they showed up at my shop that day with Jake in tow, my heart didn't just sink, it shattered. "Emily, we need to talk," my dad said as they walked into my shop unannounced, Jake trailing behind them like he owned the place. "Sure, what's up?" I asked, sensing something was off. Dad cleared his throat, glancing at Jake before speaking. "Well, Emily, we've been talking, and we think it's time Jake took over the business here." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Come again." "Yeah, Emily, I'm ready to run things now. You can stay and work the floor, but I'll handle the business side of things," Jake said, his tone casual as if this was the most natural thing in the world. The room seemed to spin for a moment. "You're serious?" I stared at them, my heart pounding in disbelief. Mom chimed in, her voice soft but firm. "It's for the best, honey. You know how hard it's been for Jake since he dropped out. This could really turn things around for him." "But this is my business. I built it from scratch," I protested, my voice rising. Dad's tone was stern. "And it's time you thought about family, Emily. Jake needs this more than you do now." "Needs it? I earned this. Why should I just hand it over?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jake sneered. "Because I'm the one who should have been doing this all along." "You just got lucky, sis." "Lucky? Do you even hear yourself?" I was shouting now, anger flaring. "I worked day and night to build this place. You never even liked mechanics." Mom tried to soothe the situation. "We know you've worked hard, Emily, but Jake is your brother. Helping him is the right thing to do. Help by giving away my business. How is that fair?" Dad was losing patience. "Life isn't always about what's fair, Emily. It's about family. This is my livelihood. You're asking me to just step aside for him. What about what I want? What about what I've worked for?" Jake scoffed. "Come on, Emily. It's not like you can't find another job. Let me have this." "That's enough. This is my shop, and I'm not handing it over to anyone, especially not under these ridiculous circumstances." Mom looked at me with disappointment. "I thought you cared about your family, Ellie." "I do care, but this isn't caring. This is taking advantage." The tension in the air was thick. Each word from them felt like a betrayal. "You need to leave now." Dad shook his head as they turned to go. "Emily, you're making a big mistake." As the door slammed behind them, my breaths were heavy, a mix of rage and heartbreak. They came here to strip me of everything I had worked for under the guise of family support. This was the moment I knew things would never be the same again. Crash. The sound of breaking glass jolted me out of my paperwork. I rushed to my office door just in time to see Jake climbing through the broken window, his face twisted in determination. "What the hell are you doing, Jake?" My voice was a mix of shock and anger. He brushed off his jeans nonchalantly. "Dad said you agreed to let me take over today. Figured I'd start early." "Agreed? Are you insane?" "I never agreed to anything." I couldn't believe the audacity. Jake smirked, moving past me to sit at my desk. "Come on, Emily. Dad said you'd see sense. It's time for me to run things." "This is breaking and entering, Jake. Get out now, or I'm calling the cops." My hand hovered over my phone. He shrugged, clearly unbothered. Go ahead. Dad will just bail me out. You really think he'll take your side over family? Family? Is that what you call this? My anger boiled over as I dialed 911. I reported the break-in while Jake watched, his smirk never fading. The police arrived within minutes. An officer stepped into my office, assessing the situation. Jake, you need to leave now, or you'll be arrested for trespassing, he warned. Jake stood up, defiant. She's my sister. She's making a big deal out of nothing. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. I want him arrested. He broke into my office and refuses to leave. The officer nodded and cuffed Jake. Once the police had taken Jake away, I sat in the quiet of my vandalized office, the broken window a stark reminder of the day's events. The next morning, I applied for a restraining order. As I sat in the courthouse filling out the forms, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. This was the final break. My family's entitlement had pushed me to this point, and there was no turning back. The restraining order was granted without issue, and the judge's stern look as he handed it to me seemed to convey an understanding beyond what he could put into words. Leaving the courthouse, the weight of the day settled over me. This wasn't just about a broken window or a disrupted office. It was about breaking free from a lifetime of being undermined and undervalued. That night, I secured the broken window as best I could and made plans for a new security system. The reality of my situation was clear. If Jake and my parents were willing to go this far, who knew what they'd try next? But one thing was certain. I was not going to let them destroy what I had built. As I locked up the shop, I looked around at the tools and cars, each one a testament to my hard work and dedication. This was my place, my achievement. No amount of familial manipulation could take that from me. It was time to move forward, to build even bigger, and to prove that I was more than they ever gave me credit for. The shop was quiet, the only sounds being the distant hum of the city and the occasional clank of metal cooling in the night air. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. The days following Jake's arrest and my filing for a restraining order were a whirlwind of gossip and mixed reactions. Walking into the local diner, I could feel eyes on me, whispers trailing in my wake. Some of the townspeople sided with my family, their glances cold and judgmental. Emily, how could you do that to your own brother? Mrs. Thompson, a longtime family friend, asked, her disappointment palpable. I sighed, my patience wearing thin. He broke into my shop, Mrs. Thompson. I had to protect my business. Others, however, admired my resolve. Mike, a fellow business owner, clapped me on the back as I left the diner. You did what you had to, Emily. Can't let family push you around if it's bad for business. Grateful for the support, I focused on the path ahead. The incident with Jake had exposed vulnerabilities in my business that I couldn't ignore. It was clear I needed to fortify my shop, both legally and financially, to prevent any future claims or disruptions. I spent the next few weeks meeting with lawyers and financial advisors, tightening up every loose end. Emily, it's essential you have clear legal documentation about the ownership and operations of your shop. My lawyer, Mr. Carlson, advised during one of our sessions. We drafted several documents that solidified my sole ownership and laid out explicit protocols for business operations and succession. Meanwhile, I also worked on a strategic plan for expansion. I had always envisioned opening a second location, and now seemed like the perfect time to move forward. Researching potential spots, I drove around neighboring towns, scouting locations that offered growth opportunities. One promising area had a high demand for auto repairs, but few service providers. I negotiated a lease for a suitable space, envisioning a new branch of Emily's Auto Clinic that could serve a broader community. Back at the shop, I held meetings with my team, keeping them updated and involved. We're expanding, I announced one afternoon, a buzz of excitement filling the room. And I want all of you to be a part of this journey. We're not just a team, we're a family, the kind that supports each other. This period of reaffirmation and growth was busy but fulfilling. As I implemented the new security systems and reinforced our practices, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My evenings were spent reviewing business plans and preparing for the opening of the new location. Every step I took was a testament to my dedication to my craft and my independence. It wasn't just about proving my family wrong anymore. It was about building the life I deserved. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above any challenge. As the dust settled from the upheaval with my family, I turned my focus outward, forging a path that was wholly my own. The community's response was mixed, but over time, those who supported my decision to stand firm against my family's entitlement began to rally around me, forming a new chosen family. The centerpiece of this new chapter was Mia, a young woman fresh out of vocational school, hungry for an opportunity to prove herself in the world of auto mechanics, a world still dominated by men. When she first walked into my shop, her situation mirrored the early days of my own career. "I've knocked on every door in town, Emily," Mia admitted during her interview, her eyes determined yet anxious. "Yours is the last shop on my list." I saw a younger version of myself in her, the same drive, the same need to prove that talent isn't gendered. "You're hired," I said without a second thought. "But I'm warning you, it's tough here, and I run a tight ship." Mia grinned, the relief evident on her face. I wouldn't have it any other way. Mentoring Mia was as much a learning experience for me as it was for her. As I taught her the intricacies of diagnostics and repair, she reminded me of the power of resilience and the importance of giving someone a chance. The chance I once craved and fought for. Together, we tackled complex repairs and overhauled engines. Her presence brought a new energy to the shop, and her quick learning and dedication quickly earned her the respect of the rest of the crew. It wasn't long before customers were asking for her by name. "Seeing you handle that wrench, it's clear you were meant for this," I told her one afternoon, a smile playing on my lips as we worked on a particularly stubborn old truck. Mia wiped the sweat from her brow, returning the smile. "Couldn't have done it without a great teacher." The culmination of our hard work and community support came to fruition with the grand opening of the second location of Emily's Auto Clinic. To celebrate, I organized a community event inviting local businesses, customers, and friends to join us for a day of celebration. The event was a hit, a carnival of sorts with food stalls, music, and free vehicle checkups. Children darted between stands, their laughter mingling with the chatter of the crowd. It was more than a promotional event, it was a testament to the community that had embraced me and the business I had built from the ground up. As I stood back and watched the festivities, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey. My parents and Jake were nowhere in sight, their absence a stark contrast to the full, vibrant scene before me. They had chosen their path, one that led them away from this success and happiness. In their place, I had found a richer connection with those around me, proving that family isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by the support, respect, and love you find along the way. "Here's to new beginnings," I toasted with Mia, raising my glass to the bustling crowd, to the thriving business, and to the endless possibilities that lay ahead. As the sun set behind us, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, the lights from the event cast a warm glow over everything. This was more than my recovery, it was a rebirth. That's the end of my story. Now here's a question for you all. Do you think Emily was right to stand her ground against her family's demands, even though it led to estrangement? Or should she have found a compromise to maintain family unity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and triumph. Thank you for watching. Hi, I'm John. I greeted as the autumn sun filtered through the towering oaks, casting dappled shadows across our sprawling family estate. The air buzzed with the lively chatter of relatives, and the warm breeze carried the mouth-watering aroma of roasting meat and freshly baked pie. It was the day of our annual family reunion. Beside me stood my wife, Anna, radiant and heavily pregnant, mingling gracefully with the crowd as we welcomed cousins, uncles, and aunts arriving in waves. "Honey, isn't it wonderful to have everyone here?" Anna squeezed my hand, her eyes scanning the crowd. "It is," I replied with a smile, "but stick close. You know how Mom can be," I whispered, nodding toward my mother, Helen, as she navigated through the crowd with sharp eyes, always assessing. As the day wore on, the initial small talk gave way to deeper conversations. My ever-cheerful sister-in-law, Julia, joined us by the edge of the garden, her presence offering a welcome buffer against Mom's increasingly watchful gaze. "So John, that new case you're working on sounds intense, huh?" Julia's attempt to steer the conversation elsewhere was transparent but appreciated. "Yeah, it's complex," I replied with a laugh, "but nothing compared to managing family dynamics." As my gaze drifted back to Mom, standing with a group of my aunts, her sharp eyes occasionally flickered in our direction. Anna noticed too, her expression tightening. "I wish she'd just come out and say what's on her mind, Anna muttered. This silent judgment is exhausting. She thinks she knows what's best, I sighed, though the truth weighed heavy on me. The sun began to sink lower as everyone gathered around the long table set up on the lawn for dinner. The clinking of silverware mixed with the murmur of conversation, and glasses were raised in toasts. It was picturesque, almost perfect, until Mom sat directly across from us. John, I hope you've been making time for Anna, despite your busy schedule, Helen remarked, her voice carrying an edge that caused a few nearby relatives to pause mid-bite. Mom, Anna's doing great, I assured her, placing my hand over Anna's. Yes, Helen, I'm quite capable of taking care of myself. But thank you for your concern, Anna responded, her tone polite yet firm. Helen's lips tightened, her fork hovering in midair. Well, with the baby coming, you can't be too careful. I was just reading an article the other day about how important it is for expectant mothers to avoid stress. Really, Helen, I'm fine, Anna replied, her voice calm but resolute. John's been wonderful, and Julia has been such a great help. Julia, catching the cue, chimed in with a bright smile. Absolutely, and wait until you see the nursery we've been setting up. John, why don't you show your mom the photos? As dinner wore on, Helen's comments grew more pointed, veiled criticisms aimed at Anna's diet and her decision to continue working late into her pregnancy. The tension at the table thickened, with relatives exchanging uncomfortable glances. Finally, I stood, raising my glass. I'd like to propose a toast to family, both by blood and by bond. May we always support and uplift each other, no matter what. The glasses raised in agreement, and for a moment the air lightened. But Helen's tight smile as she sipped her wine hinted that the evening's peace was fleeting. As night descended and dessert was served, the warmth of the reunion cooled under a lingering shadow of unease. The earlier laughter and stories faded, replaced by tense shuffling as we moved inside for dessert. Anna, wait until you try the lemon tart. Julia's been raving about it all day, Aunt Margie said, her cheerful tone cutting through the stiffness. I'm sure it's wonderful, Anna replied, her arm linked with Julia's as they ascended the staircase together. But behind them, Helen's eyes narrowed, mistaking Julia for Anna due to their similar dresses. Her steps quickened, driven by a dangerous mix of resentment and misguided protectiveness. I need to speak with you, now, Anna. Helen's voice, sharp with urgency, pierced the air, but it was Julia who turned. Helen, I think you. Julia began, but there was no time for explanations. In a swift, impulsive movement, Helen pushed her, sending Julia tumbling down the stairs. The sound of her fall was a terrifying symphony of gasps and a heavy thud. Julia. Anna screamed, rushing down the stairs as the family recoiled in shock. Helen stood frozen at the top, her face pale as the gravity of her mistake sank in. I pushed through the crowd, my legal instincts kicking in through the personal horror. Call an ambulance. Now, my voice cut through the chaos as I knelt beside Julia, assessing her injuries. Why would you do this, Helen? Anna's voice trembled with a mix of fury and fear. She's your niece. Helen's hands fluttered helplessly, her voice stammering. I thought she was you. I just wanted to talk. By pushing her down the stairs. My voice was cold, my eyes searching hers for some explanation that made sense. As Julia was rushed away on a stretcher, moments later, the house fell into a somber silence. John took Helen aside, his voice tight with a mix of disbelief and authority. What's going on, Mom? Your behavior tonight wasn't just out of line. It was dangerous. What did you think Anna was going to do? Helen wrung her hands, her voice a shaky whisper. It's all those articles and talk shows. They say some women trick men, trap them with pregnancies. I thought she was manipulating you. John blinked in disbelief. Manipulating? Anna, she's my wife, Mom, and we're having this baby together. How could you believe something like that about her? I got scared, Helen muttered, her eyes downcast. Seeing her, or who I thought was her, it all just came rushing back. John ran a hand through his hair, struggling to reconcile the protective mother he had known with the woman who now stood before him, consumed by irrational fears. Anna needs me. Julia needs justice. We're going to deal with this, but right now, I can't even look at you. He turned away from his mother and walked back to Anna, who stood by the door with red, swollen eyes. As they awaited word on Julia's condition, John's resolve hardened. The night air, thick with unspoken words, mirrored the family's shattered trust. The festive atmosphere of the reunion had dissolved, replaced by the grim reality of the consequences of a misunderstanding that nearly cost a life. At the hospital, the sterile hum of fluorescent lights echoed in the narrow corridor as John paced outside Julia's room. Inside, Anna sat by her sister's bedside, holding her hand as the quiet beeping of medical monitors filled the room. The weight of the night's events pressed heavily on John's mind as he considered the next steps. Returning from the security office, John held a USB drive in his hand, the small device loaded with undeniable evidence. "I've got the CCTV footage from the house," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's clear. Helen saw Julia, mistook her for you, and pushed her, no hesitation." Anna's voice trembled. "Why would she do this, John? It doesn't make any sense." "It was deliberate, Anna," he replied. "She really thought she was pushing you. It's twisted, but it's right there, in black and white." Just then, Dr. Simmons entered the room, his expression serious. "Julia is stable, but she has a concussion and a broken leg. She's going to have a long recovery." John nodded, his voice calm but firm. "Thank you, doctor. Can we have a moment?" The doctor exited the room quietly, leaving them alone. John turned to Anna. "There's something you need to see. It's not easy, but I think you should know how far this went." Together, they watched the footage on John's laptop, the grainy black and white images revealing the horrifying truth of Julia's fall. Anna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. "Oh God, John, she really thought she was pushing me." John took her hand, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "I've been thinking, we can't let this go. Julia deserves justice, and we need to protect you and our baby." Anna looked up at him, her voice shaking. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that my mother needs to face the consequences. I'm going to press charges." "But she's your mother, John. Can we really go through with this?" John's gaze was firm. "If we don't, then what? She nearly killed Julia. What if next time it's you, or our child?" Anna nodded slowly, her own resolve strengthening. "You're right, it's just hard." "I know," John said softly, squeezing her hand. "But it's necessary, for all of us." Leaving the room, John made some calls, reaching out to the family attorney and laying out the situation. His voice was resolute. "Yes, I understand the ramifications, but I can't let this slide. She has to be held accountable." Back in the hospital room, Anna's phone buzzed with a text from her brother-in-law, Michael, who had just heard about the incident. "Is it true what happened? Is Julia okay?" Anna quickly replied, explaining the situation and John's decision. Michael's response was immediate. "You have our full support. This is unimaginable, but it's necessary." John returned to the room, placing a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder. "The lawyer is on board," he said quietly, his voice firm but comforting. In the days that followed, preparations began to move forward with legal proceedings. "We'll start as soon as Julia is able to give her statement," John said to Anna. The next few days blurred with legal discussions and tense family meetings. Relatives divided, some in disbelief at Helen's actions, while others condemned her outright. John found himself distanced from many people he had once been close to, the rifts caused by his stance seeming too deep to ever fully heal. One evening, as John and Anna sat quietly in the hospital cafeteria, Anna reached for his hand. "No matter what happens, we're in this together, right?" "Right. Together," John replied, his voice steady, his grip firm. As they returned to Julia's room, John glanced between his wife and his sister-in-law. He steeled himself for the fight ahead. The truth was unraveling, exposing the cracks in a family that had once seemed unbreakable. The courtroom was tense, the only sounds being the shuffle of papers and the occasional murmur. Helen sat stiffly beside her lawyer, her gaze fixed straight ahead. Across the room, John stood with Anna, bracing himself to watch his mother face justice. The judge entered the room, and a reverent hush fell over the crowd. "This court is now in session," his voice boomed, echoing through the chambers. The prosecutor stood, her voice clear and resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here to address a grave act of violence, one that could have ended in tragedy. We will show that Helen acted not out of confusion, but out of malice, endangering the life of her niece, Julia, whom she believed to be her daughter-in-law, Anna." Helen's lawyer rose in response, his tone calm and measured. We acknowledge the severity of the situation. However, we argue that this was a misunderstanding fueled by concern, not an intent to harm. As the trial unfolded, witnesses recounted the events of that fateful night. Anna took the stand, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I never imagined we would end up here, facing such a heartbreaking family rift. Julia was mistaken for me, and it wasn't an accident. It was intentional." Then came the pivotal moment, the presentation of the CCTV footage. The prosecutor played the video, the images stark and undeniable. The footage showed Helen pushing Julia, and a collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. John watched the screen, torn between his roles as son and attorney, each frame of the video feeling like a personal blow. When John was called to testify, he spoke of his mother's growing resentment and paranoia. "It pains me deeply, but I must stand for what is just. My mother's actions were deliberate and dangerous." In her defense, Helen finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting my son. I believed there was a threat to his future, to our family's honor. I'm sorry, truly sorry, but it was a mistake." The jury didn't deliberate long. The evidence was overwhelming. Soon, the judge was reading the verdict. Based on the evidence presented, the jury finds the defendant, Helen, guilty of aggravated assault. The judge announced Helen's sentence: years of probation and a restraining order to protect Anna and her unborn child. The finality of the judgment echoed through the courtroom, settling like a weight on everyone present. After the trial, as the crowds dispersed, John and Anna stood together outside, the tension of the past weeks lifting slightly. Anna looked up at John, her eyes a mix of sorrow and relief. "It's over, but how do we move on from this?" John took her hand, his voice resolute. "We rebuild. Together. We focus on our future, on our family. We make sure our child grows up in love, not resentment." Their commitment to each other and their future child was unshaken, even as they navigated the aftermath of a family fractured by fear and misunderstanding. And that concludes their story. It's been a long, difficult journey, but it leaves us with a question. If you were in John's position, would you press charges against a family member to uphold justice? Or would you find another way to resolve the situation in order to preserve family bonds? It's a tough call, one that balances moral duty and family loyalty. What would you do? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.